Welcome to Seller Sessions. I am your host today, Sharon Evan, and today I have Regina and Chris with me from Australia, and we're going to be talking about selling on Amazon Australia. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for making it on.
Hey.
Thanks very much for having us, Sharon.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
I'm really happy to have you guys here. We haven't connected in a while. But for anyone that doesn't know you guys, Regina, we'll start with you, ladies first. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Regina Peterbergsky. I am an Amazon seller since 2015. In fact, August, it's my anniversary of launching my very first product, 2015, 6 years, almost to the day.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I have a podcast here in Australia called Women on Amazon, where I interview kick-ass women sellers and service providers. It's not exclusively women, but mostly. And I have the dubious honor of being Australia's first third-party seller before they launched the Amazon Australia platform. I was helping them test out their systems. So a little bit about me.
That's so cool that you're the first ever third-party seller in Australia. That's a pretty awesome title.
And that's about all I got for it.
Well, tell us all about it. So, Chris, welcome back. For anyone that doesn't know you, let's do a quick intro.
Sure. Thanks, Sharon. And great to see everybody. Obviously I'm Chris Thomas, and I also, like Regina, run a podcast too called the Australian Seller Podcast. Been selling on Amazon since about, I think it was beginning of 2015 or maybe late 2014. Can't quite remember the dates. I'm not quite an anniversary guy like Regina is, poor girl. And now I do still sell on Amazon. I sold a brand last year and for a nice little exit there. And now I'm also set up an agency, and I'm helping Australian brands and international brands actually sell not only on Amazon Australia, but also Amazon internationally too. So a lot of irons in lots of fires.
That's really awesome. I think that we're going to have a really awesome show today amongst the three of us, and I'm really excited to dig into your brain. So we'll get straight into it. Thank you again for coming on. So let's start off with the conversation was all about selling on Amazon Australia. There is a lot of talk that Amazon Australia, which half of it's true, but that Amazon Australia is not really, there's not much demand. People in Australia don't really buy on Amazon. Can you guys give us your insight for how you see Amazon Australia today and where you think it's going? And just give us some insight on what you think about that statement, basically, because a lot of people say, but there's no one buying on Amazon Australia. So is that statement true or not?
Can I take this one? Is that all right, Regina?
Go for it.
So, look, it's a yes and no. So it's a bit of a yes and no answer. But I think if we look at the trend that Amazon Australia is, the trajectory of the trend. So last year I think it was 18-19, they sold about, last year anyway, they sold around about $500 million worth of stuff here. And then this year when they announced their earnings, they'd sold about 1.1 billion. So they were certainly, or maybe it was 1.2 billion. So, in terms of what's going on with, the United States or the UK and growth, but the growth is still huge. Amazon is also investing very, very heavily here in Australia. They're not going away. So they've got two warehouses, two FBA warehouses in Victoria, in Melbourne, in one of our states. They've got another two up in Sydney, which is New South Wales. One's currently under construction, which is the biggest logistics warehouse and fulfillment warehouse in the Southern Hemisphere has been built. It's all robotic and all that stuff. They've got one in Brisbane, and I believe they've now got two over in Perth, which is over in the West. So the investment that Amazon is making here in Australia is significant. And the foundations are definitely still being created by Amazon Australia. I think the issue that Amazon Australia at the moment in terms of the buyer side of things is that Amazon Australia has really struggled to get new customers on board, particularly with, as Prime members. mainly because the catalog is not particularly as fleshed out as what it is in other marketplaces. So you've got a bit of a chicken and egg that they're still wrestling with, I believe, internally.
It's a chicken and the egg thing, right? But it's getting better.
It definitely is, Regina. Yeah. And so what we're seeing is that sellers have been reluctant to sell on Amazon Australia because the buyers aren't there, and the buyers are not there because the range and the catalog hasn't been fleshed out. So, but Amazon is working very hard to do that by attracting a lot more third-party sellers together with a lot more Prime member customers as well. So let's just watch this space and see. But my feeling is it's going to grow.
Regina, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, look, I was very, very bullish, too bullish when they first launched and brought a lot of inventory into Australia at launch time, and got burnt like a lot of sellers. But last year, COVID was actually really good for my business. I'm in a category that people who are in lockdown were buying my products. So I actually sold out. So it was great. My recommendation for sellers coming into Australia is to go wide rather than deep. In America, you can do really well with one SKU, two SKUs. Okay, the people here in Australia that I know that are doing well have multiple SKUs. So you're better to have a small amount of a lot of different products than a lot of product of, a lot of cartons or units of a small number of products, if that makes sense. So the wider you are, the more chance you're going to have of catching those sales.
Yeah, shallow and deep.
Yeah,
so going wide and shallow rather than narrow and deep, I think is probably
correct.
Yeah.
Today, like on Amazon US, I focus anyway, a lot more on brand building and selling to a specific buyer avatar and the same types of products they want. And what you've just said kind of reminds me of Amazon US 2014, 15, 16, where it was the opposite.
In the US, in the US, we niche down, right?
Yeah.
In Australia, you need to broaden out.
So
what you're saying, bit broader.
In Amazon Australia today, you can do what we used to do back in the day, which was you can just sell random products and do really well. It's not that you need to focus on like brand building at this stage. Is that what you were saying? In a way?
Yeah, look, I think what I'm saying is if you already have a brand that's selling on other markets, then yes, bring in some products. If you're starting out and you're able to get a whole lot of stuff at a good price, then yeah, it's a good opportunity here to go and have that first mover advantage in some of the categories that perhaps do not have a huge range of variety.
Okay, let's start with the beginning. How hard is it to get an Amazon Australia account? I literally don't have one, so I don't know. So is it just the same as any other, like Amazon in the UK, US, etc.? How hard's like the verification process, or is it really just the same as everywhere else?
Well, it's pretty much the same. There's obviously local tax laws, etc., that you need to adhere to. So, you do the tax interview in the United States, for example, and you would say in the UK, where you've got the VAT registration, etc. Here in Australia, we have what's known as a GST, which is a goods and services tax. It's the same as the VAT. So there's a little bit of fluffing about getting all of that stuff, but of course the regular stuff like the seller verification. So your personal ID, who you are as a seller personally, together with your entity, if you have one. So it's the same pretty much.
Okay, so that would mean that there's no excuse or reason for anyone selling in Amazon US to not also even look at Amazon Australia, right? Because before we started, I said to you guys, there's a lot of panic now around, sourcing in China, sending products to the US with all the surcharges now and how expensive it is to ship products, 700% more to ship containers, sea shipping. So many people are panicking. And I think that there's other things and other options to look at. There's other countries and other marketplaces to also look at. And if back in the days, we'd look at just one specific marketplace and that was it, maybe today, not maybe, I think that people today need to start diversifying and realizing that the US is not the only place in the world. Amazon also is not the only place in the world, but we're focusing on Amazon. So getting to Amazon Australia, from what you guys are saying, is there's no reason why, you know, a seller that already sells on the other side of the world shouldn't also open up an Australian account as well.
Correct. My other recommendation is if somebody is sending inventory into Australia, to not send it exclusively to Amazon, because we have, you know, very healthy other marketplaces.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that they allocate some to a 3PL warehouse that can fulfill for eBay and can fulfill for Catch of the Day and any number. I don't know. We've got dozens of different marketplaces. So it depends on your niche. So there are some category specific marketplaces, but certainly the big three, Amazon, Catch, and eBay, you have to be on all three of them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a great tip, to not send everything to just Amazon. So what is different about, apart from obviously demand, what is different about Amazon Australia compared to Amazon US? I've written some notes, but in case I'm sure you guys will say it, but what are some main differences, hurdles, advantages that you guys can think of when it comes to Amazon Australia?
Well,
getting your ads shown, you know, I can't spend my ads budget.
Because there's not enough people searching for it, isn't like
not enough people clicking, clicking ads. But ads are still pretty well priced, and especially video ads. Nobody, you know, if you're doing video ads in Australia, you can really clean up.
I'd agree with that. And the click costs here too are really, really cheap, generally, depending on the category, of course, and what you're selling. But, you know, I've got clients that have got running ACOSs of around 7%, no problem. Yeah. So, you know, it's just because the click costs are just so ridiculously inexpensive, because there's just not a lot of demand. So you can really clean up in a category if you can get your ads to actually show, to Regina's point. But in terms of the differences between, let's just take the United States, for example. Look, there's a lot of differences between the United States and just about every other marketplace. For example, things like posts, I don't believe exist anywhere apart from, say, the US. And that's certainly the case here in Australia. We don't have posts. We don't have like creative asset libraries, and there's a whole myriad of different features and bells and whistles that exist in the US and in other marketplaces that just don't exist here in Australia, although they are being slowly rolled out. So you just have to be patient and wait. There's a couple other considerations as well, I think, for new sellers that are thinking about selling on Amazon Australia. Not all the categories that you see in the US, for example, are available in Australia yet. I mean, even I think it was like late last year that they rolled out like the pet category. So they started to sell pet food and cat litter and all that sort of stuff, and pet toys. So there's, I can't list a comparison between, you know, what's available in the US and other marketplaces compared to Australia, but there's certainly those sorts of issues too. So before you go wandering in and creating a whole seller account and then find out that the category that you sell in is not even available in Australia, you probably want to check that first. Yeah, absolutely.
How hard is it? Because Australia is it can be a pretty tough country to bring products into, getting past customs, right? How hard is it to get certain types of products into Australia? So I know, like with beauty, the beauty products that we sell, it's not that it's like not doable, but I have to go through a lot of different processes to get them into Australia compared to getting them into America or Canada, for example. Canada's like a tough country to get stuff into. So on an Australia, like just importing into Australia, what is it? I know it's a broad question, but how tough is that? Do you guys?
Look, I think, you know, again, for most consumer type goods that Amazon sellers sell, it's fine. But again, like anything that goes on the body or in the body, you know, we do have extra layers that are probably certainly tougher than the US. So that's what I would be careful of. But widgets, widgets are generally fine. You know, our ports are working. I'm not sure what the shipping costs are like these days. I guess the same way as to the States, the holdup is China and getting the actual containers and the pallets that's the shortage. It's not so much at our end. Our ports are fine, I believe. It's the China end side of things where the issues are lying at the moment.
Yeah, there's no shipping congestion in Australia at the moment at all.
And we also have a free trade agreement, so we don't really have tariffs at the moment either. We haven't for a few years now. So that's one of the great things. So what you gain in tariffs, you lose on the GST. So Kristen mentioned, we do have GST. It is 10%, so it's less than the UK VAT, which is 20%. So, but we do have the GST of 10% that we have to charge. That's a pass-through tax, the same as the VAT. But on imports, we do have the free trade agreement with China. So there's no tariffs on most goods.
Almost a free trade agreement. I think China's
on most goods. On most goods. I'm not.
Yeah. There's been a lot of tariffs slapped onto our wine and our barley and lots of other commodities that we ship into China at the moment because they don't like us at the moment. They're not very happy with Australia.
We're not doing a tit for tat yet, are we? I think that's sort of that's a trade war that's coming, but we're not going to get into that.
Totally unrelated to Amazon. Sorry about that, Sharon. We just took over there with some domestic politics.
It's good. It's good to get to know these things. So we spoke about, I did a little bit of homework like I do for a subject that I'm not 100%, not confident, but don't know a lot about, which is Amazon Australia. And my dad lives in Australia, and I said to him, he lives in Queensland in Hervey Bay, and I said to him many times, I'm trying to get my stuff onto Amazon, and he laughs at me. He's like, no one buys on Amazon and in Australia. And I said to him, no, I know that there are certain ways that if I was to be able to just get my products into Australia in beauty, I know that I'd be able to find the buyers, even if it's outside of Amazon, because, like YouTube ads and all sorts of things.
You definitely find them. We have big Instagram, and we've got our, influencers and all of that. So yeah, absolutely. Whether you did it through Amazon or through your own website, you definitely find an audience.
What are some methods that you guys have seen of people getting the traffic if it's not from within Amazon? Look, on the one hand, we sell on Amazon to take advantage of Amazon's buyers, right? Otherwise, why do we need Amazon? So it's like you said, it's like the egg and the chicken. On the other hand, we can also get outside traffic using YouTube, like Reddit, Instagram, etc. What are some ways that you guys are seeing sellers getting traffic outside of Amazon, seeming that PPC is not for every category? I think there are some categories like toys and things like that that's easier, but what are some methods that you guys are seeing people use in Australia, Amazon Australia, get traffic from outside of Amazon?
I might just take this one super quick. I've got a friend of mine, Rob Britton, and when he launches his products, for example, he uses amongst a combination of things like, we talked about YouTube, we talked about Facebook and Instagram and that sort of stuff. But he also uses local Australian deal sites where he actually adds an Amazon coupon code and offers a discount of say 15 or 20%, whatever. And, not too much, but not too little either, but enough to attract traffic. People will take advantage of the coupon code and going onto his listing and buying. And he's had a lot of success launching his products and ranking his products using those domestic deal sites. So I think it's something that he's doing in the US as well with reasonable success too. So there's those sort of tactics that you can employ. Absolutely.
This is the part of where I did my homework. Is that, I even wrote it down, is that AU best deals and Aussie bargains?
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Yeah. There's a lot of them around. I can't remember which one that Rod's using, but he's done really well with that. And he's bringing container loads of stuff into Australia as well. So he's really making a pretty good fist out of what's going on here in Australia. Absolutely.
And the other thing that I'll say, Sharon, is it's easier to rank here. You don't need to do all these big giveaways and things. If you've got a really well-written listing that's optimized for keywords, both front end and back end, you can rank pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult if you've got a really good listing to actually rank organically pretty high for your keywords.
Are there certain types of categories that are better on Amazon? So for example, I know that like giftable products are pretty good on Amazon Australia, but are there certain types of categories where people like Australians do go to Amazon for more than like Catch or other places that you can think of?
Yeah, probably.
I think it's less category specific and more customer specific. I think some customers are just Catch customers.
Yeah.
And some customers are just eBay customers.
Yeah.
And some customers are Amazon customers. I don't know if you have a different feeling on that, Chris.
Well, I'm actually an eBay customer and an Amazon Australia customer as well. So I'm not really wedded. In fact, I'll check both websites to check prices and things. I was just going to say that, we're talking about the riches that are in the niches. Well, they're not on Amazon Australia. The riches, if you're going to do product research, for example, in Australia, the best place to go is to look at the bestseller rank, the bestseller for each category, and look at the top 100 products there, and you can see the sort of products that are actually selling. And so there's a lot of products, for example, is sort of every day, there's a lot of baby stuff gets sold actually. So there's a lot of nappies and consumable sort of stuff like that just always seems to be topping the bestseller list. And a lot like America as well is, like Lego and electronics like Bluetooth headphones and things like that. So recently Zonguru actually did a bit of a webinar about selling on Amazon Australia and really gave it a big G up. And some of the product examples that they looked at were things like car covers, for example, which I thought was pretty cool, where there's what they were doing was that they've identified that a lot of the products that are sold on Amazon Australia are actually sold by Amazon Global. And what that means is that you're actually buying from the United States and you've got to pay extra shipping, even though it's Prime and all this sort of hoo-ha, to get those products here. And so if you can identify a category or a keyword where, like car cover, where you'll see a lot of the sellers are actually either merchant fulfilled or they're Amazon Global, which happens a lot. What they showed was an example of one seller that had created a domestic Amazon listing, which was fulfilled out of, I believe, from Amazon fulfillment here in Australia, which is a Prime offer. And they were doing about $30,000 or $40,000 a month, and they were pretty much the only seller that was selling a car cover. So those, there are these nuggets that are sitting around. The other one was camping chairs as well. I believe they showed too. And so, you wouldn't even think to sell a car cover or a camping chair on Amazon in the United States unless you really knew what you were doing, because of the amount of competition, the amount of reviews. We haven't really talked about reviews on Amazon Australia, but there's hardly any generally. So it's sort of, if you can look for these strategies where you can look for those opportunities where you can get in and private label something and get your reviews under your belt. And looking at the trajectory that I spoke about at the beginning, where we're looking at the growth, where they predict that Amazon Australia will be doing about $20 billion by 2026 or something. It's starting to turn into a significant marketplace. And if you've got all those reviews under your belt, you're starting to build a bit of a moat. Certainly at the moment,
we are. I haven't checked, Chris. Are we still sharing reviews?
It depends on the product, Regina. It's a really great question. So. I've certainly got products here in Australia, for example, that I sell in the United States, which are also here in Australia, which do share the reviews. And then I've got clients that sell their products in different categories where the reviews are only domestic and they're not shared internationally. So I'm not right behind it, but it's a really weird one at the moment as Amazon works.
That's actually worldwide, that issue now, because I've also got some products that are on, I don't sell them in Europe. There's European listings there that people buy from us and sell on anyway, and they don't share the reviews with our American. It's the same ASIN, but they don't share the same reviews as with our American listings. But then the same ASINs in Canada do. So I think it's like a weird one right now since they made those changes. Something I just thought about while you were talking. I've not really spoken about this online before, but publicly only in my inner stuff. Anyway, part of my product research methods is that I actually, a lot of the time will get into, because you guys know I come from New Zealand. So I get into a lot of Australian and New Zealand Facebook groups for different types of things. So I'm in a whole bunch of home decor Facebook groups for Kmart and Target and a whole bunch of them to get certain ideas for things. And then I will go and niches specifically. And I was just thinking about part of my launch method as well is to do the same thing in America, get into these Facebook groups. For example, if you sell like a storage box for Lego, then when people are asking for hacks, especially like Facebook hack groups, so organization hacks and stuff like that overseas, then you plug in, your ASIN. I was just thinking about the amount, just specifically home decor, but the amount of home decor Facebook groups in Australia is insane. Like organizational hacks and Kmart hacks. And I think that that would be a pretty smart strategy to plug in your products if you're selling on those kinds of niches. I only just thought about that as you were talking. What do you think about that?
It's spot on.
There
in
you
fact,
go.
Yeah. Like there's like Kmart mums here in Australia, which is a massive Facebook group. And they're always talking about the different ways that they use the products that they bought from Kmart, or they've identified a product at Kmart that they really, really love. And I was thinking exactly the same thing, Sharon, thinking about just going into those groups in a lot more detail and actually looking to source products that are very similar. It's obviously very popular on Kmart with the Kmart mums. Not sure why we've got a mums group and not a dad's group, but anyway, that's another story for another day.
Maybe you can start one, Chris. Off you go.
Yeah.
I missed my calling, it's fascinating stuff just to see what they do. So it's a really good point, Sharon. Yeah, I love it. Great idea.
Thanks. What do the fees look like in Amazon Australia?
Pretty reasonable.
Are they similar, like FBA fees and referral fees?
The referral fees are pretty much the same. I think it's around about 15% for most of the categories, and obviously a bit cheap with. But the actual fulfillment fees are actually pretty reasonable, and I believe that Amazon Australia, actually, they sent me an email the other day and I didn't read it properly, but they are actually dropping the referral fees on lots of different categories, just by a handful.
Some categories, yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're, again, trying to attract more sellers onto the platform to boost out the range and stop relying so much on Amazon Global. So the fees are pretty good. The fees pretty much, though, in terms of like the actual seller, subscription fee if you're a professional seller on Amazon Australia, about the same. Yeah, it's but there's also GST on top, which you don't have to pay in.
And then, of course, if you've got a unified global account, you don't pay the full amount
on the monthly fee.
They spread it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
A question just came to my mind while you guys were talking. I was like, I have to remember to ask this, and then I forgot it. So I'll ask something else in the meantime until it comes back. Software
tools, research tools. Was that your question?
Well, it's the question I'm going to ask, but it wasn't the question. I wish I would remember, because I was like, I have to remember to ask this because it came to my mind while you guys were just speaking. It's the way my brain works sometimes, but it'll come back soon. But yes, software is tools. It's hard to find softwares and tools that are a little bit accurate, not 100%, but a little bit accurate when it comes to Amazon Australia. Like, I personally, and I'm sure you guys are exactly the same, if you took tools away today, I would survive. I'm sure that both of you would survive as well. We know how to read the BSRs and try and understand amongst different categories how many units are being sold, etc. I can't really do the same for Amazon Australia because I have no idea how to read the BSRs. I know that more or less a BSR of, for example, 5,000 in beauty in America means that you're selling about 40 to 50 units minimum a day. I can't do that in Amazon Australia at all.
No.
So no. What do you guys use for that?
Well, we're in the last 6 months, both Helium 10 and Zonguru have launched tools that work on the Australian marketplace. I can't speak to their exact accuracy. So I always caution people and say use them as a tool to find out the relative value. So if you're comparing one product to another, rather than concrete answers of these people are selling definitely 20 a day, you can say, okay, well, this product is selling more than this one. Do you have thoughts on that, Chris?
I do. They're both pretty close to each other in terms of the revenue for most of the products that I've looked at, and in terms of the sales volume, obviously, as well. What was I going to say? I guess the tricky bit is that just the lack of search volume as well. Zonguru does have kind of like, the classic sort of overlay table when you're using Chrome, whereas Helium 10 doesn't. X-ray is not available in Australia, but it is available when you dig into the back end of Helium 10 in the membership area, where you're looking at, say, I don't know, the product, Black Box or Cerebro or Magnet. Those sort of tools work pretty well. But they're not too bad. But before that, just to your point, Sharon, all we really had, the only tactics that we could use was like Keeper, sort of give us a sense of what was going on. And then also, of course, the very unreliable 999 add to cart trick, if the seller hadn't sort of set the, and we would actually sort of track.
I haven't heard that name.
I know, right?
I'm actually
talking about old technology.
Yeah.
I'm still using it. I'm still
Really?
tracking products in the US. Yeah, absolutely. Just to make sure. Yeah. Before I pull the trigger.
I haven't used the 999 method in so long, like years, I think. That's awesome.
I still check things. So there's a product I'm looking at the
You're
moment,
old school, Chris. You're old school. Good for
well,
you.
it's a $300 product to the US, and they're selling around about 10 to 15 of these things a day. And I'm just watching their inventory deplete every single day. It's just, so it still sort of works, and it does match up with what Helium 10 is saying about the product too. So
that's a great method though for Australia, from what you were saying. I didn't even.
It can work.
That.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, of course. If Amazon's selling a product, it's always 1,000 or more, and and if the seller's set like a what is it, the maximum order quantity?
Maximum order quantity. Well, that was one of my tricks for beating these 999 people.
Yeah, I have said as well. You can't
setting the maximum order quantity so that people like you can't check my check my quantity.
No, that's true. But look, the biggest problem that these tools face, I think, is that, and look, I don't know how they work and how the algorithms work specifically, but because the BSR varies and it just fluctuates so wildly, because you might get a sale today on a product that's worth $40, and then you might not get another one until tomorrow. And so the BSR could literally drop from, I don't know, 25,000 to 200 literally with just one sale. And so you get these massive fluctuations and volatility in the BSR, which makes it very hard for the tools to actually try and estimate. And I think, look, it's hard. I've got a soft spot for both tools, but I'm pretty sure that both tools, though, do sort of track that, when the BSR does drop dramatically, that they sort of mark that up as a sale. And you can do that quite easily. And we used to be able to use Keeper as well, but Keeper's doesn't work in Australia anymore, which is really disappointing, because we could actually sort of almost count the sales as the BSR fell.
Do you have brand analytics in Amazon Australia?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay. Because I think that also, I honestly have no idea how Zone Guru and Helium 10 work, but I think something to do with brand analytics there is also in the algorithm that they have. But brand analytics is probably a good tool to use.
Well, I know that certainly Helium 10 interviewed a lot of sellers, like when they were developing their tool. I jumped on a call with them, as I know a few other people who did, where I told them, okay, this is where I'm ranking. This is how many sales I'm making. This is my category. So I know they were doing some benchmarking before they launched their tool.
But, Sharon, really good point though, brand analytics. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good place to go to and see what's popular and what's not.
Yeah. From this conversation, one of the biggest things I got was, which I didn't know before our call, so I've learned that from you guys, so thank you, is that Amazon Australia, I think, is like a huge opportunity for the simple stuff that you have no way at all of even trying to sell at Amazon US anymore. And as Amazon Australia grows, you're going to have that advantage for when the rest of the world suddenly realizes, oh, wait a minute, we should sell in Australia, but you've already, really, you've got heaps of reviews. You've ranked these products ages ago. You've got all these reviews because you've been selling it for like 2 years, and you're going to be able to get away with it. So I think that for also newbies, testing products, it's a good time to be sort of like, it's a greenfields opportunity. So if you're in it for the long haul, it is a good time to stake your claim. If you're trying to sort of make a quick buck and get out, Australia is probably not the best place. But in terms of a long-term business growth strategy, absolutely, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and it's a very wealthy country, Australia, and it's a great place to do business. It's very stable, and not to diss any other country out there.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah, but it's a great place to do business, and be a proper business. And yeah, I love doing business down here.
Do New Zealanders also buy from Amazon? I don't even know where Amazon.
Yes. Oh, yes. Good point.
Yes.
Amazon Australia is shipping to New Zealand now. They've just announced. So yes, Kiwis are buying from Amazon Australia now. Just in the last couple of weeks.
I did see something like that. So that means that now we've got both.
That's another 5 million potential customers.
Yeah. That's something to think about.
Plus all the sheep.
It's like the first thing people hear when they hear from New Zealand, from this side of the world. They're like, New Zealand, that's the places with all the sheep. So we kind of missed that. But I think that just like to understand, when in Australia, when you go into Amazon today, does it force you to buy from Amazon Australia rather than Amazon US?
It asks you whether you want to go to the global site, and it's like always, you put in your postcode.
Postcode, yeah.
Postcode, yeah, and it will show you products. If you're searching, it will show you products from both Australian and global, and you can select, to show me products that ship from Australia. So you can actually deselect global listings if you choose to.
And then one last question, and unless that question I wanted to ask has left my mind. I have no idea what it was now, and I'm going to regret it later. But another question I find, I started selling in New Zealand at a really young age, and I've sold like you guys to all over the world. And I think that there is a difference between selling to Americans, between selling to British people, between selling to Europeans, between selling to Kiwis and Australians. How important do you think is to really actually understand the Australian buyer, right? In order to, because if you've got, I don't know, Europeans or Americans now trying to do the same thing that they do in the US, and a product that maybe is used totally different in Australia, or, and things like that. How important do you think is it for buyers to actually get to know the Australian buyers, do some research? Or not really, by your faces.
That much, I don't think.
Again, it depends on your category. There are certain words that have different meanings.
Yeah.
Also, our spellings are slightly different.
S, Z, and things like that.
Australians are not sort of huge fans of that big American sales pitch.
Yeah.
So you might want to tone it down a little bit. We also are partial to some humor. So if you can add a humor to your listing, that might sort of do something, but generally very similar.
Cool.
I remember selling alpaca socks on Amazon in the United States that I'd sourced from Australia for about a year or so, and I didn't get very far with some of the jokes that I was trying to make about those alpaca socks, which was save the dramas for llamas and stuff like that.
In America, you're saying you didn't do well?
That would not go over in America.
Yeah. Didn't work. No.
That's why I think that there are certain things, sometimes I say stuff when I'm speaking to people from the other side of the world that any Kiwi and Aussie person would understand me straight away. And they're like, what did you just say? And I'm like, so I think that maybe there are something, especially on the humor level, it's a good point. Maybe also, I watch a lot of Shark Tank Australia, a lot. That's what I do in my spare time, which is never. But when I'm doing my makeup and I've got something on YouTube in the background, I'm usually watching Australia Shark Tank. And there's a lot of humorous brands. I'm not going to give examples. You can just go watch. But there's a lot of humorous brands that do really, really well, and that the sharks invest in. Stuff with swear words, stuff with, funny stuff. I think that there's some things in specifically Australia that if you did know that about Australians, that could give you an advantage to sort of get someone to click on you rather than someone else, even if it's a funny slur on a coaster or something.
Yeah. So look, if you don't live in Australia, get in touch with Chris and I and just have a conversation with us.
Yeah.
And we'll, we'll tell you some jokes that you can put into your listing.
I'll give you another example, actually, while I'm thinking of it. I was helping a client last year. She launched a new brand of flip-flops on Amazon in the United States.
People may not know what flip-flops are on the other side of the world.
That's right. Well, obviously here in Australia, they're called thongs, right? And I think in New Zealand, correct me if I'm wrong here, they're jandals, is that right,
Jandals in
Sharon?
New Zealand.
Jandals,
Jandals.
yes.
There you go.
Jandals.
Anyway, so and the name of the brand was Slappers Thongs, which just went down an absolute, like a lead balloon over there in the United States. And I really struggled to get those Slappers Thongs to sell, because when
there's no way you could sell that brand in Australia. Everybody knows what that means, and it's hilarious. But in America, it would just go.
It was
straight over.
pretty funny. Like if you did a search for her products on Amazon in the United States, the search results were quite questionable. And so we struggled there. But she sells millions of these things over here in Australia. In fact, she's even selling them in Australia post, our local sort of, it's like the USPS or whatever, those post stores and things like that. So she sells a bunch of them here. But over there, it hasn't translated at all. So maybe you have a think about it and talk to us first before you bring over some crazy brand name, across to Australia.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. I did think of something else that I didn't, it's not the same thing as before, but I have really... one of my favorite and largest clients, they're in Australia. They don't actually really sell a lot on Amazon. They sell outside of Amazon. And one of the hardest things that we've faced before they came to me was IP protection. They didn't realize how important IP protection is. They've got heaps of, so they sell the specific product on their website. They've got a huge, like really, really well-known influencer that uses their products. That's the reason that they've been doing so well. The NBA players buy their products. They're doing amazing. Anyway, heaps of Australian carpenters and New Zealand carpenters that can make these products out of wood have copied them. So I think that IP protection in Australia and New Zealand is something that we didn't really talk about. How important is that, do you think, when it comes to trademarks, patents, etc.? How easy is it? I mean, I know some of the answers.
It's the same. And we have, IP attorneys here who, can set up that protect the same way as IP attorneys in the US. And it's as important as any first world country. Absolutely. I have some clients that they're about to launch. They're not launching actually on Amazon, that they're launching. Before they're launching, they've already had $100,000 in funding for 10%. So they're already $1 million company. They haven't launched. And when they came to me a year ago, I said, like, the first thing you have to do is whatever it costs, lock down that IP.
Yeah.
Because the product they've got is reasonably easy-ish to copy. So, they really have to get their patents and not just their brand name, but actual use patents and all of that absolutely locked down super tight before they go public. It's very exciting when it's launched. I can't wait for them to launch. But as I said, like, they're already $1 million company. Yeah. And they're still getting their TGA approvals and things. It's amazing.
That's cool.
Well,
I was just going to say, just particularly on the trademark, like a couple of weeks ago, it's probably about four weeks ago, I registered a trademark all by myself, which I've done many times before with ipaustralia.gov.au for 250 Australian dollars. You can just do that on your own, and which is about 185 US dollars, so very cheaply. And I was able to get brand registry not only here in Australia for one of the brands that I'm selling, but also in the United States using that. So I don't have protection in the US, but it does give me all the brand registry benefits. It's not quite, it's more of just sort of a side comment on what you're talking about with IP, but it is very cheap to get IP here. But with the patents, I don't think we've got, I don't know, Regina, do we have like a legal Zoom for Australia where you can kind of go through a wizard to file a patent or a provisional patent?
There's a lawyer, Rosalind Gladwell, I think her name is.
That's her, yeah.
Gladwin,
she's great.
Yeah, you know Rosalind, yeah. So she sort of specialises in IP for e-commerce sellers here in Australia, and I sort of refer people over to her if I ever need to.
Yeah.
I stayed up last night until 2 a.m. because I was on the phone with these Australian clients and with the US patent lawyer, and we were anyway. And we were basically going to file in America and then take all that paperwork and then find a lawyer in Australia and file that way. But I think that people sometimes think that you only need to protect yourself in America. But I think that if you're starting to sell in Australia and you've invented something or you've highly differentiated on, I think that in any doesn't matter if you sell on Amazon or if you don't sell on Amazon, I think that protecting is important as well.
Yeah.
Because of
Well, it's just good business practice, right?
100%.
We're business people,
the thing
we're
is,
not,
it's sometimes
we're not flippers.
yeah, sometimes, and like these clients specifically, they're not business people, they're inventors. They invented a product. They're just very, very smart and don't necessarily have that business background. And I think that it's just sometimes people forget the IP protection and agreements. It's like one of the most important things before anything else, especially I'm talking now if you've highly differentiated or anything like that, but that's including Australia, because people will copy you in Australia as well. Anywhere.
Yeah, it happens.
Anywhere.
Yeah, it's not just China.
It's not just China.
Yeah, that's
it. But don't forget too that having IP or having a patent is only as good as your ability to actually defend it. So 100%. It's up to you to be monitoring any infringements on that patent and then being able to have enough money in the kitty to be able to actually then fend them off, and stop them infringing. So and some sellers do create the patent and then they actually hire a legal firm, sort of a no win no fee, to actually fight the infringement on their behalf and claim damages for the infringement. There's lawyer guns for hire. There's a few firms out there that will do that and fight those battles on your behalf for a percentage of whatever they can extract from the infringer. And then the other place that you might want to think about getting patent protection too, and certainly trademark protection, is China itself, particularly if you're manufacturing in China. So otherwise, it's a first to file in China, particularly as it relates to a trademark. So, and we've seen with Apple, well, I don't know if it was Apple, but certainly with Microsoft, and I think even Tesla forgot to file like a trademark in China, and it meant that if you're manufacturing there, the trademark owner can actually prevent you. The Chinese trademark owner can prevent you from actually exporting your products and hold you for ransom over there. So there's those sort of issues too that you can think about.
Okay. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's like I could spend a whole hour talking about the amount of stories that I have with China is like, I should make a whole episode about that, because I've been through a lot of stuff in China. But I just remembered that, Chris, you wanted to talk about also, before, I know I keep remembering stuff, but one more thing. I remember that you said that we should talk about the dashboard and what actually Amazon Seller Central Australia lacks, maybe, compared to Seller Central US.
Yeah, look, I
touched on that.
Everything, but we kind of touched at the beginning. It's sort of like posts, and we can respond to customer reviews in the United States now as a brand registered business, but here in Australia, you can't do that. There's just a lot of things and features that I think if you were selling in the US and you were accustomed to the United States, coming and selling here on Amazon Australia through Seller Central would be a pretty underwhelming experience given the lack of features. So, but we do have brand registry. We do have sponsored products. We have sponsored display. We can do video ads. We can do a lot of the advertising is pretty much the same. But it's still a little bit primitive, but it is right. They are rolling out. Amazon Australia is rolling out more and more features all the time. So yeah.
Cool. So if anyone wants to sell very basic commodity products that you can't sell in the other side of the world, I think Amazon Australia is a great place to start, as well as brand building and selling other things as well. But I think that there's, I think watch this space is something I'd say about Amazon Australia. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it, and your time as well. So first of all, if anyone wants to get a hold of you and find you, we'll start with Regina. Regina, where can people hit you up?
Oh, I'm very easy to find. My website is Women on Amazon. That's plural, Women on Amazon. And I hang out on Facebook Messenger. I'm the only Regina Peterbergsky on Facebook.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Chris.
Well, Regina, you're the only Regina Peterbergsky in the entire world. There is only one.
That is true.
Really?
Well, there's not many of us Peterbergskys around. I'm the only one. I'm the only Regina.
That's so cool.
As I joke, all of those spam emails that tell me about dead relatives that have left me billions of dollars. Well, I know that ain't true because I know every single one of them.
That's funny.
That is funny.
Chris.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. Look, I've got a website too, theaustralianseller.com, but you can head over to Facebook and join my group there. You can chat to me through there. So if you head over to theaustralianseller.com/Facebook, knock yourself out, come and say good day.
Awesome. And Regina, what's the, I know the podcast, but can you remind people the podcast?
Women on Amazon. It's the same.
Cool.
So the
Women on
the Facebook group, the website, the podcast
Everything.
are all Women on Amazon.
Okay, cool. Chris, the Australian seller. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Isabella will be back on Monday, and Danny will be back on Tuesday, and I will see everyone next Thursday. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sharon.
Thanks for having